Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're gonna talk about interviewing, and I'm actually gonna give you 6 very effective tips that are gonna make your next interview loop way much easier and are gonna increase drastically your chances of success. How did I get to those tips? Well, that's very easy. If you follow my previous videos, you know that I work at Amazon and I conducted over 70 interviews, plus reaching out to friends in other big corporations, and yeah, I just put together all those feedback and I created some guidelines that I want to share with you today. Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe, as it's gonna give me the motivation to continue making videos such as this one. So before we start with the first one of the 6 tips, let's start with some pre-work. The first thing you need to do before even thinking about interviewing or like applying for a job is to revise your CV. You need to go back to your CV and make all the changes and adjustments, adapt it, make it in a compelling style, and also start thinking about what were the most important project you worked in the past couple of years, let's say. If you're at university and this is gonna be like your first job, think about your most important group projects or like internships or anything related to that you can actually use to showcase your skills or basically the way that you're able to work with other people. Reworking your CV is crucial because that's your first impression that the company for which you're applying for is gonna have of you. And also another recommendation is to actually have multiple versions of your CV, one for each kind of big job that you want to apply for. So for example, considering a software engineer, for example, you might have different specializations within the same job family. So you might have one CV if, for example, you want to focus for a backend kind of role in which you are giving much more spotlight to the work that you did in the backend side, or a front-end one, or like for example full stack in case you have experience also in that. And basically every time you need to apply for a job, you just decide which is the CV version that is the best suitable for this particular position. So you adjusted your CV, you applied for the job that you wanted, and you actually got invited for your first interview. So that's great, congratulations, but now it's time to start working for real. So this brings us to the tip number 1, and it's do your research. Read whatever material is being sent by recruitment for helping you preparing for the interview. Try to do research about the company culture to understand what is the things that interviewers are gonna probably look in a discussion with you. And also there is internet nowadays, so take advantage of that. Look up on Glassdoor for interview feedback, or even on YouTube if anybody is explaining or like dissecting the interview process, because this is gonna be very helpful. It could be like a great mistake to not take advantage of all the resources that are available online. So once you finish your research, it's time for tip number 2, and the tip number 2 is basically to rewrite all your project experiences or relevant work into the STAR format, which stands for situation, task, action, and result. So think about all your projects and try to bring them into this format. So think about what was the situation, like the context in which you were operating, what was the task that was supposed to be done, what were the actions that you executed in order to bring a resolution to this task, and what were the results. And especially the last part is a very important one, because a lot of people sometimes they just go over the situation and the actions, but they don't really spend much time regarding the results. You are trying to convince the person in front of you to hire you, and you should always give a lot of details about how important and how big were the results of your action. Did you make your company make million, or even you optimized the process so well that actually your company saved millions? So, those are all things that are really important to mention, and especially try to be as specific as possible, because providing a sense that is very clear, like providing numbers, it always helps a lot when it comes to assess and evaluate the person that is in front of you. And this brings us to tip number 3, which is actually pay attention to your language when you're interviewing. Make it very clear what were your contribution in the process, what were the action that you took, and make it a clear distinction from all the noise that could be actions that other people took or like other teams took. Be very specific on what you did and make it stand out. I know it might sound a bit annoying, especially for people that are not really open into how to celebrate their successes, but here is not about bragging. Here is about making the person in front of you understand understanding what did you do in that particular moment. And that's the only time that maybe they're gonna be able to have this kind of conversation with you to evaluate you. So make yourself stand out, make very clear what you did and also how your action impacted the ones around you. Moving on to the tip number 4, this applies a lot, especially when it comes to FANG companies, and is don't try to guess which is the leadership principle or like the culture item that the assessor is trying to evaluate. A lot of time it happened to me that people in front of me, they just tried to guess what family of question was my question coming from, and they replied with something completely unrelated. So in case you're gonna interview for one of those companies that have a very standardized sets of like leadership principles or like cultural points, don't try to guess them. Besides, if the interviewer is gonna tell you explicitly which one it is, you just try to answer at the best of your knowledge of the question that is being given to you. Don't try to do any other work around that. Like, it's already stressful enough to be in an interview. You don't have to try to forecast what is the kind of question that is being asked and like what kind of follow-up question can come from that. So the tip number 5 is a tip that is more applicable for people that just started their professional career, but it's a good reminder for people that are a bit further in theirs. And it's to don't purposely put yourself in a bad spot. You are interviewing, nobody's forcing you to pick up a specific example of your past because the person in front of you doesn't know your past. So you're choosing what you want to discuss about. And my recommendation is to not choose things that could make you look bad, especially because they could be easily misunderstood and misinterpreted. My recommendation is to use examples in which even if there is a conflict or something more into a gray area, it's always end up with a positive resolution. So for example, if somebody's asking you to, like a time that you had a disagreement with a colleague, don't pick the example in which you didn't speak with the colleague anymore, or like in which the colleague lost the argument against you and then maybe actually lost the trust of the team, but try to pick up an example that ends with a positive resolution, in which you manage to find a sort of alignment, or in which you or the other person at the end learn something without any source of blame, but more kind of a safe environment. Because at the end of the day, we all have like conflicts, but it's how we solve them that is making us standing out in a possible interview process. And the last tip that I have for today is to ask questions. So it's a discussion. Despite the fact that the interview can be pretty one-directional sometimes, you always will have some time for questions, and that's the moment that you need to use the most. Like, that's the moment in which you need to go and ask everything that comes to your mind to assess both the person in front of you and the company itself, because you are going to commit to work for that company. Is this company that you're interviewing for aligned to your values? Is the work-life balance something that you are willing to accept? Are the responsibilities in line with your value, in line with your interests, or is maybe something that is kind of different from what it was advertised on the job posting? So this is your time, this is your moment to collect all those information that otherwise you wouldn't be able to collect. And there is a reason why you can ask questions at the end, because after 1 hour of interview, or even more, even though I hope it's just going to be 1 hour, you have a kind of a sense of familiarity of the person in front of you. So you feel it's going to feel easier to ask questions and try to understand what is this person experience about the company, or like about the role itself, if maybe it's in a similar role as you are going to be. So don't hesitate to ask questions. And also, this is very often looked as a sign of being interested in the position. So like a person that asks more questions is usually seen in a better spotlight compared to one that doesn't, but that's not like universal, and it really depends by the company. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you like this kind of content. If so, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and also leave me in the comment any kind of other tip that you will leave to somebody watching this video and maybe struggling into finding a new job. I know that the time is not the best one for looking for a job, but maybe by the time you're gonna watch this video, is actually like all the old situation is gonna be flipped again. And please, if you have time, don't forget to check also the video that I'm gonna make appear somewhere here about like how to learn the best places to learn SQL for 2023. And until next time, ciao.